Hey everyone, I'm Brian.
I'm Tyler.
And we're Gardener in Love. Hey guys, we hope you're having a wonderful week so far. We are in the garden again, and we are outside the Union Garden actually, in a little corner of space that we have started planting. We have a carding mill rose, and we also have a ginger wine 9-bark in this spot already. We've also planted some gay feather in this spot that we're excited about that's just starting to peek out, but there are no annuals yet, and we have some heat-loving annuals that we can pop in this spot, and so we're going to tell you about them.
And I'm also going to be adding drip irrigation to this spot because we have not had water running to the plants, and the poor ginger wine 9-bark is kind of on its last leg.
He's a little worse for wear.
Hopefully we can save him and he'll be all good next year.
Yeah, let's show the plants.
All right, so today we are planting 2 beautiful heat-loving annuals over here in this corner. I have Luscious Royale Red Zone, which is a beautiful bright red lantana, and it kind of ages to orange. And this is something that we don't normally lean towards. We lean towards kind of like the soft peaches and pinks, more cool colors. And this is very, very hot. But I'm kind of excited to see what we think about this as it fills in. Went out on a limb with this one. But lantana is really great if you live in the South like us. It loves the heat, it loves the full sun, so I'm sure this is going to love this spot over here. And then we also have this plant called High Noon, and none of these are in bloom yet, but it is covered with buds. And this is a bush daisy. So this is one, it's technically an annual, but it's a perennial in zones 8A to 10B. So this will probably come back for us. So we're planting this in a spot where we're okay if it comes back. This will have really pretty yellow daisy-like flowers all over it, and it will kind of mound up to a short little mounding habit in the front. So we're going to plant the bush daisies in front and then the lantana behind, which will give us a nice stair-step feature. And I'm going to set these plants down, and I'm going to show you the drip tubing that I'm working with. So we typically buy the Rainbird drip tubing. You can buy it at your local big box store usually, and we get the tubing that has emitter holes every 18 inches, and each emitter emits 0.9 gallons per hour. I just say 1 gallon per hour. My only complaint with this tubing is that it does only have a hole on one side. So we usually try to tack it down with the hole up so that the water can kind of flow to both sides. Now there are tubings out there that have holes on either side, but they don't really work well with our irrigation system, and we haven't been able to figure out why. We did have some of those before, but the Rainbird works really well. We just have to make sure that we tack it down right so that the holes are facing up. It's also just a good practice because if your holes end up facing down or to the side, you will naturally get some sediment in the tubing, and if the hole is too low, the sediment could over time clog the hole, and then you won't have any water flowing out. So it's just a good practice to have your tubing facing up if you've only got one emitter hole. So I'll be adding in some tubing in here in kind of a grid pattern, and this zone in particular only runs for 15 minutes. Otherwise, this turns into a big soggy mess over here in the Union Garden. So I will be putting quite a lot of tubing in here just to make sure we get good coverage since we don't run it for a while. But I'll show you all the steps and you'll be able to do this on your own once we're finished. All right, so we got everything planted. We did also go ahead and add in some gay feather that we had pre-sprouted. So we put some in the ground and we pre-sprouted some in pots with some potting soil just to see what like the germination rate was. And they all came up, which is pretty cool. So we went ahead and added the pre-sprouted ones in here as well, back behind the rows. So now let's get to the drip. So before I get started, I want to talk about the supplies that you'll need. So you'll obviously need some drip tubing, and we use both the brown tubing that already has the emitter holes inside of it and just your plain black poly that is solid. We use the poly as kind of a supply line to different flower beds, or we may use it as the main line, and we'll pop individual emitters if we want to have water to a specific area. Like our Incredible hedge in the front has just solid black poly, and we added the emitters ourselves so that we could really direct where we wanted the water to go. But when you're laying out a bed like this where it's full of stuff, we usually go ahead and use the brown tubing that has the emitter holes already, just because you can get a lot more coverage and you don't have to add in the emitters individually. They're already in the tube, which is great. So to cut the tubing, you're going to need some kind of pruners. We usually use our Felco 2s. I've got some landscape staples here, and these are not my favorite. We usually buy some very heavy-duty galvanized landscape staples, but I ran out, and so we're using these in a pinch. These aren't as heavy-duty as I like, but they will get the job done. And then I keep all of the rest of my supplies in this little toolbox that Brian got me for Christmas one year. So in here, I've got all of my connectors. So I'm going to be using some T connectors today, and then I'll also be using some elbow connectors. And it's very important to pick a brand and stick with it. So we've got Rainbird drip tubing here. All of my connections are Rainbird. If you try to swap out brands and connect them together, it doesn't always work. We put in an irrigation system for my parents last summer for just a small flower bed, and my dad was adding on to it, so he cut the line and added in some connectors, and they kept blowing off. And I told him, I was like, you've got Rainbird stuff there, go get some Rainbird connectors. And he did that, and it all works now. So it's very important to pick a brand and stick with it if you can. It's going to make your life way easier in the long run. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find the line on the other side of the fence here and tap into it, and then we can get started with laying out our grid. So here's one that goes to the hydrangea. Okay, it goes back this way. My goodness. Okay, it was just underground a little bit more than I thought. Trying to think of the best way to tap into this here. Right there, that way you could come straight off of that. This right here? Yeah. Right underneath it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up a little bit, and I'm just going to clip it. So you want to make sure before you clip that there's no emitters anywhere nearby. Otherwise, you may not be able to get your connection in, so I think we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and clip, and I'm going to grab a T connector. If you've never done drip irrigation before, it can be very difficult to get the connectors into the tube. The guy that installed our irrigation system said that sometimes on the really thick tubing, they'll even use a blowtorch to warm it up, which sounds insane, but it worked because he did it here one time. Okay, so now I'm going to have to go under the fence, which is going to be really fun. So I'm just going to make a little trough here with the mulch, and I'm going to go get my tubing and feed it under the fence, and then we'll connect it. Okay, so now I'm going to connect this to our main system here. So I'm just going to slide this on. And the nice thing about the Rainbird tubing is that the black lines are the side where the holes are. So see this hole right here? So I'm just going to try to keep that on top. So I'm going to go back on the other side of the fence, and now we can start putting together our grid. All right, so now that I'm drenched in sweat, I have the grid finished. So I ran a tube back here, and then ran 2 lines in between, and then connected it over here with another elbow, and another T and brought it right back to the back. Now we have figured out that when you connect it all back to itself, the flow is just way better than if you were to run the drip and just kind of cap it at the end. If you can connect it all back, you're just going to get better water flow and better pressure. I don't know all the technical terms about that, but it just works better, so trust me. So this will run for 15 minutes every single day in the morning. We'll get probably pretty good water coverage in here, and this edge right here will get a little bit overlap from the lawn sprinklers. So I think that this will be good, and we'll just keep an eye on it. Like drip is definitely helps, but it's never set it and forget it. You may have a leak, or you just may find that the coverage isn't enough. So what we could do if we find that this isn't enough coverage is we could connect the rows, if you will, with columns in between to add a little bit more coverage, or we could just up the time that it runs. It really is, there's no one way to do it. You kind of figure out what works for your area in your garden and go with that. It's trial and error, and that's really gardening, right? It's just one big experiment. So Brian is going to add some mulch over top of this so it'll be all nice and pretty. We won't see the drip lines. Actually, before you do that, Brian, let me grab my phone and let's test the drip just to make sure it works. Okay, so I'm just going to run this for 5 minutes to see what kind of coverage we get. Now this will run for 15 minutes, but we'll just see what we're working with here. I hear it. Ooh, there it comes. Perfect. Everything looks good. It looks like all the holes are emitting, which is awesome. I am happy with this. I think we're good to add mulch and get all these plants watered in.
All right, everyone, we officially have all of our annuals in the ground for the year.
So sad.
I think I'm excited about it because that means they can all come in, fill in really nicely. We've still got a few months at least of the season here in Charlotte, and I think that all of these are going to be really beautiful by the end of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them fill in, but I do get sad at this time of year because it's, you know, we're on the downward spiral now of the garden, kind of working its way towards fall.
Yeah.
But we like fall as well because it's a time of rest. We've certainly put a lot of work into our garden this year, so rest is well needed at this point.
Well deserved.
Yes.
Anyway, we hope you guys have enjoyed this video. We hope you'll check back on all of our annuals. We'll be sure to share them in our monthly garden tours. And for now, please be sure that you like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.